Extending from elementary school to high school, I participated in several different volunteer programs that involved scattered and superficial volunteer experiences. These experiences stemmed from larger high school groups like Key Club or through church groups or field trips in elementary or middle school. Through all of these experiences, I thoroughly enjoyed volunteering and got involved in it a lot, but I think my perspective about volunteering was a problem. I always felt that I was doing so much for an organization or someone else. I genuinely left volunteering events thinking that I really changed something or created an impact. I never really recognized any impact on me other than that it felt good when I volunteered. When I attended the first Ethic of Service meeting, this was when I first began to question the way that I had previously approached my community engagement. In my reflection, I discussed a desire to have more long term relationships with organizations where I sought to deeply understand the organization's work and mission, while simultaneously removing any remaining mindset associated with the white savior complex. I think a large part of community engagement I had gotten wrong before was that I did not understand the significance of making the community organization's mission your mission. I used to volunteer at a distance and never create a strong relationship with the organization to where their obstacles and problems were also my obstacles and problems. However, I think once I'm able to dismantle these past patterns and establish strong relationships in an organization, this was when I was able to actually create an impact. I then took a Latino immigration service learning course, which began dismantling my prior ideas of society with human rights, bias, race, and immigration. My professor brought firsthand experience to our attention to discuss. I specifically remember an instance in which a recent immigrant from Central America came and spoke to our class with her child about her experience with immigration. She described the extreme pain and struggle that she endured back home, and also she told us a story of how her husband had gotten deported, so she was here alone with her baby. This class consisted of first-hand learning experiences like this from those who were immigrants or those who had worked alongside immigrants, such as an immigration lawyer. Further, I volunteered at Anderson Community School as a childcare provider and Copal as a phone banker with this class. With Anderson Community School, I was able to hear specific experiences from others who had immigrated with their children. With Copal, I was a phone banker during the 2018 election. This was the first time that I'd really engaged with politics significantly because I was not 18 at the time of the election in high school, and I didn't feel like a significant responsibility to educate myself at that time. However, I do recognize the privilege in the situation now. While we heard stories, my professor also prompted continued discussion regarding bias and race. In participating in this course, I began to work to educate myself on immigration and human rights issues, but also addressing my bias. This course was really the start to educating myself and also dismantling previous ideas that I had had. Following the Latino immigration course, I began to work as a CNA in Woodbury. With this position, I was given an opportunity to significantly impact people's day-to-day life. As a CNA, especially during COVID, I was one of the only, if not the only person to interact with some of the residents on a day-to-day basis. Since I was at St. Therese for over 2 years, I was able to develop strong relationships with the residents and the longer-term rehab patients. Although I was getting paid, this was my first organization that I really internalized their mission. I worked really hard each day to provide the best care I possibly could for the patients and residents and give them as much of my love, time, and energy as I could. Especially during COVID, I made sure to take the time to have conversations with the residents because I would be one of the only, if not the only, people that they would see that day. This position gave me the opportunity to impact individuals on a day-to-day basis. In addition to my relationships with the residents and patients, I developed strong relationships with my coworkers, many of whom were immigrants from African countries such as Ghana, Ethiopia, and Liberia. I remember in spring of 2019, there was the potential that 150 of the Liberian immigrants working at St. Therese across the state would be deported after their temporary legal status was set to end. I recognized my privilege in this situation because I had not previously been impacted by immigration. However, this was the first situation that would firsthand affect my coworkers, who were my friends, and also would impact my job. It was infuriating to think that 150 people working jobs that are extremely short-staffed and who have roots and lives in Minnesota would be deported. The migrant status ended up being extended, but I always think back to the situation and remember the anger that I felt from only being minorly affected by immigration. In situations with discussion regarding immigration, I go back to internalize this anger that I had, which is nowhere near the anger and the sadness experienced by a loved one who is deported or someone who is deported. But I think this got provided a perspective where I can understand a very small bit of the deportation problem in the United States. 2020, with Black Lives Matter protests and the significance of the election, was a critical point of education for myself. I had little to no awareness to the depth of the experience of what it was like to be Black in America. With watching the death of George Floyd in May of 2020, I could not believe it. I was angry and I was heartbroken, but mostly I was sorry that I didn't grasp the struggle until now. This anger turned into educating myself and then protesting as an ally. Protesting for me incurred initially in the streets of Minnesota, but more so having those difficult conversations with friends and loved ones. That healthcare sit-in that I attended at the Capitol was one of the most powerful protests for me. I vividly remember the organizers of the sit-in walking around the crowd of healthcare workers, holding up signs depicting severe healthcare disparities. As an aspiring healthcare provider, I have a responsibility and an opportunity to address these disparities and use my voice to advocate for those suffering from inequitable healthcare. I began volunteering with Cedar Riverside Adult Education Collaborative in the fall of 2019. I was initially a teacher assistant and citizenship exam tutor, but continued to volunteer to spring 2020 with writing and facilitating curriculum for an ESL conversation course for my ISEP project. Cedar Riverside Adult Education has been a hallmark organization for my growth during college. After dismantling my previous ideas regarding community engagement, I strive to create a long-term relationship with an organization, but also with the people utilizing the services of the organization. With Cedar Riverside, I was able to create relationships with the students, the volunteer coordinator, and take on more responsibility with facilitating my own class. I developed a collaborative relationship with the students in my class. I always requested feedback and insight from them for the content that worked or did not work for them. I then made adjustments to the course from this. Cedar Riverside also provided a way for me to connect with a community of people that were so close to the university campus but yet felt so far. I was able to remove the distance and develop a relationship with the broader Minneapolis, which was very special. Stemming from all of these experiences in college and through CESP, I've been shaped to who I am today. I continue to grow and strive to have an analytical, critical, and humble perspective.